The Seafood Task Force, or STF, is an industry-led organization that addresses illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing by promoting the application of social and environmental standards within seafood supply chains, as well as strengthening worker well-being and compliance. The STF is pleased to act as a resource for tuna fishing vessel owners and operators, but has a few ground rules that ensure these standards are met. This video will break down the requirements of the STF Code of Conduct and Auditable standards, which are easy to follow with a basic understanding of a few rules and how to follow them. First and foremost, under the Child Labor Code, the STF prohibits the employment of any person under the age of 18. A clear procedure for age documentation for any potential employee is necessary. Typical documents for the purpose of verification may include passports, national identity cards, work permits, birth certificates, or other legally issued documents. Vessels require a procedure for safely protecting and removing any underage worker who may have been unknowingly hired. The Seafood Task Force also prohibits all forms of forced labor and modern slavery, including bonded and indentured labor, prison labor, or trafficked labor. Threats of any kind against workers are strictly prohibited, and the employee has the freedom to terminate employment at the next port visit, with a minimum of 10-day notification. All workers must have an employment contract in place that is written in a language the employee understands. A procedure must be set to assure that the contract is carefully explained to the worker. Both parties must keep a copy of the signed employment contract. Because many foreign and migrant workers rely on their employers for accommodation, they can be particularly at risk for having their freedoms restricted. STF compliance requires that employers ensure employees' personal freedoms, including access to clean drinking water, toilets, and safety of their personal documents, and have general respect for each employee. The Seafood Task Force requires all employers to ensure that employees and applicants retain full and complete control over their personal documents. In cases where personal documents are given to boat captains for safekeeping during sea-based work, workers must receive their documents once docked or at any time requested. The Seafood Task Force prohibits any recruitment and hiring-related fees, outside of legally allowed fees, to be paid directly to employers, agents, or labor brokers. The Seafood Task Force's guidance on responsibility for recruitment-related costs provides additional detailed information on fees, and employers should refer to this guidance when determining prohibited fees. The Seafood Task Force prohibits any form of abuse or inhumane treatment by the employer both in their own operations and when engaging with others. Employers must not infringe on an employee's dignity. No worker harassment, abuse, or illegal disciplinary action is allowed. Additionally, there should be no distinction between employees on the basis of race, caste, national origin, religion, age, disability, gender, marital status, sexual orientation, political beliefs, or affiliation or union membership during hiring, employment, and in working conditions, compensation, training, or for the purposes of promotion, retirement, or termination. Employees must be able to freely associate, and the STF prohibits discrimination that takes place on the basis of such affiliation. If laws restrict formal freedom of association and/or collective bargaining, employers should allow any alternative means of independent and free association to take place. Employers cannot interfere in any management activities of worker organization. The STF requires that each employer has an official, confidential grievance process whereby any worker can submit a grievance without suffering prejudice or retaliation of any kind. Also, employers must ensure workers are aware of the system and willing to use it, and must train key employees how to handle complaints. The Seafood Task Force requires all employers to pay wages as stipulated in the employment contract, which must be at least minimum wage. The employer should have a clear and transparent wage and benefits payment policy. Workers must be contracted at no less than the minimum legal wage, which does not include bonuses or profit sharing. Wage payments shall be made at regular intervals, but not less than once a month. No wages can be withheld to bind employment. Wage rates and payments must be calculated transparently. Promissory notes, non-cash vouchers, and in-kind payments are not permitted. Employers are required to provide workers with a pay slip and cannot withdraw funds from an employee's account. Wage advances or loans and interest on loans must not exceed legal limits. The charges for housing and food cannot exceed local market rate. And workers must have complete control over the use of their wages. The Seafood Task Force requires all employers to ensure that workers are not required to work in excess of the number of hours permitted by applicable law or by collective agreements, whichever offers the most protection for the worker. Employees are not required to work more hours than are permitted in their contract or stipulated in a collective agreement, whichever offers the most protection for the worker. Overtime is voluntary. Work and rest periods for vessels at sea for more than 3 days are as follows. 1. At least 10 hours of rest in any 24-hour period. 2. An average of 77 hours per week over the entire duration of the trip. The operation of a fishing vessel may require deviations in work schedules, but there must be compensatory rest time. All employees must understand their contract before working it. Workers also must be given training about living and working conditions. Training should be evaluated regularly by employers to understand whether information has been properly conveyed. The Seafood Task Force strongly encourages employers to opt for direct hiring if possible. If recruitment is necessary, there are specific actions to take when communicating and working with recruiters. 1. Recruitment agencies must be certified or licensed and cannot place workers at risk of trafficking for labor exploitation. 2. The employer must have a contract with the employment agency, including subcontractors of the employer. 3. The employer and its supplier must have documents proving the legality of any employment agency that is used. 4. The employment agency must describe the work, terms of employment, work and benefits, living conditions, and any other necessary information. 5. The agency must have a mechanism for reporting non-compliance and for protecting whistleblowers, and have a method for remediation for non-compliance. The fishing industry is very high risk, and fishing is considered one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. However, all employees in the fishing industry are entitled to work in safe working conditions that do not expose them to undue risk. All employers should have a written safety policy, record all incidents or near misses, and take steps to mitigate the incident in the future. The safety procedure must include, but is not limited to, ensuring the vessel is stocked with first aid supplies, proper flotation devices, and firefighting equipment. Have a proper emergency procedure and ensure the vessel is equipped with separate sanitary facilities for men and women. Our ambition is that all tuna supplied by members of the Seafood Task Force is sourced from fishing vessels that have implemented the STF code and are ready to be assessed against this code by the end of 2021. If you are a member sourcing or producing tuna, we ask that you begin to adopt the policies set out in this step-by-step guide. If you are a supplier to an STF member, we ask that you take the time to read the Tuna Handbook and relate its content to your staff in order to adopt these policies. Additionally, if you utilize fish crew manning agencies, we also ask that you share this handbook with them. It is our goal that with these rules, we can have a safe, equitable, and happy work environment. For more information about the Seafood Task Force, visit our website, seafoodtaskforce.global.